Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light
what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming,
whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight
were the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming,
and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air,
gave proof through the night that our flag was still there.
Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
It's May 31st, 2021, Memorial Day weekend, and here at Building Bridges Foundation at Anderson Farm, we're pausing to remember our military service veterans, warriors that have given their lives and even their last breath for the present and future of America. The American Family Association puts out a monthly publication to inform, equip, and activate individuals and families to transform American culture. The May release features veteran Dave Rover. He served as a riverboat gunner in the Brownwater Black Berets. 11 months into his tour of duty, he was burned beyond recognition when a phosphorus grenade he had ready to throw exploded in his hand. His body carries the scars for a lifetime, bridging to others that deal with the physical and emotional scars of war. In this video, for the first time, you will hear Howard Hoover's song, a song written for Building Bridges. It speaks about the name and mission of this Center of Caring for Veterans and their families, and the bridges that veterans build through defining their own journey of dealing with the emotional and physical scars of war. I'm glad to introduce you to Dana Howard. He moved here from Illinois with his wife about 9 months ago, where he retired from the Ground and Physical Resources Department of the DuPage County Forest Preserve. They moved here to be closer to her mother, who's living at Willow Valley. Dana comes to Building Bridges with a very diverse background in forestry maintenance, landscaping, and construction trades, and a wide variety of professional certifications and licenses. He isn't allowing his skills to get rusty. He's on site here 4 days a week doing a variety of seasonal and specific projects. He's offered to lead volunteers in a number of these upcoming projects, which brings us to an urgent need, and that is for your help. We need your help to accomplish some big and small but necessary stuff in property maintenance and current development projects. Dana, talk to us about that.
Okay, well, thanks, Anne Marie, for that introduction. I came to Building Bridges. I found it actually because of my wife, and it was a situation where when we moved here after I retired and we came here to take care of her parents, she said she didn't want me sitting around the house because she's still working. So we were out driving around, and I saw like a sign on the corner. And it was like one of those placards that you see for sale or a politician's sign, but it was for Building Bridges. And I noticed that it was dealing with the equine therapy. Well, I'd done this type of work back in Illinois, but we worked with special needs children. And so I took down the information and I hemmed and hawed around about, contacting them. And then we went to Willow Street Cafe. Well, where we were sitting, lo and behold, there's this behemoth of a billboard that is all about building bridges. So I said, this must be a sign, so I better contact them. And I got in contact with them, and this is how I wound up here, volunteering. We have a lot of projects that are in the works right now. We're looking to expand the Veterans Cafe with a recreational area, but to do that, we're in the process of building a new maintenance facility for equipment storage and eventually the tool shop. We're also looking at putting in a picnic area for the veterans and their families to come and enjoy the pool area and also to have the ability to have a picnic. We have a trail system that we're talking about putting in so that the veterans can just go and spend some time out in nature and reflect on things. And the list just keeps growing because Ann will come up with an idea, or Dave will come up with an idea, or Dale sometimes comes up with an idea. But yeah, it's a good place to work. The trail system we're working on will be in conjunction with Miller University. But in order to do all of this, we need help. And as it stands right now, we have some individuals that help us out on the weekend, but I'm here during the week, and because there's so much to this type of a facility to maintain, we could really use volunteers. And especially if you have skills and you're retired, this is a good place to utilize those. So I guess if you are retired and you do have skills or not, I mean, you know, just come on out. We can use bodies as well because there's a lot of small activities that you can participate in. And I would say just get out the oil can, lube up your abilities, and come and volunteer here at Building Bridges. And check us out at our website, which is www.buildingbridgesfoundation.org. And I have just one last thought, something that I wrote, and it goes like this. It is for those in darkness who have paid so much for our freedom that we extend a hand of recovery. So, you know, help us to help them. I have to go right now. I got to go take down a tree. So you can see that we have a whole bunch of things going on. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Dale Shaw, and I'm the CEO of Building Bridges Foundation here at Anderson Farm, 230 Indian Hill Road, Conestoga, Pennsylvania. And we have an interesting guest with us here today. My wife Anne Marie worked with this gentleman's brother in doing capital campaigns for charitable organizations, and through that contact we got to know Dave Vendetta. And Dave is a career journalist from the Allentown area who is retired as a journalist to become an author. I heard somewhere that one Pennsylvania newspaper has published about 100 of the stories from your books. I now have copies of the two books, Tragedy at Chulai, okay, and the other one is War Stories in Their Own Words. And the stories that people have shared with Dave, and it's incredible. I just have started reading them, haven't got too far into them, but incredible stories, very easy to read. The layout is incredible, Dave, and it's just so good to have those. They'll be a help to a lot of people. What inspired you to become a researcher and writer of veteran stories about those who gave their lives in military service?
Dale, it goes back to the mid-90s when I found out what happened to my cousin Nicky in Vietnam. He was an Army helicopter pilot. He had just gotten out of flight school. He was 20 years old. He went to Vietnam in the summer of 1969, and he was dead in 11 days.
Wow.
Somehow, I always thought that he had been mortally wounded in a rocket attack by the Viet Cong. But that's not what happened. The truth was that he was mortally wounded in a training accident involving a grenade. A training accident at a U.S. base in Vietnam. I had to know more. It just got to me, and I didn't have a picture in my mind of what happened. So that started me on a long journey, 20 years, to determine what exactly happened to Nicky, how and why. But to do that, and I wanted to write a story, and to do that, I had to get to know Nicky as well. And I really hardly knew him. He was 5 years older, lived in different town. We were from a big Italian family, so that we had lots of cousins. And I just remember that he said hi to me once at a family picnic when I was maybe 12 years old.
Okay.
So to get to know Nicky, I realized that really for the first time I had to sit down and talk with my older relatives on that side of the family. And as I'm speaking with them about Nicky, the conversations would turn to their own experiences, their experiences in World War II. And so here I had this parade of uncles and aunt, my dad, who had put on a uniform for this country and had served in far-flung places, North Africa, the Southwest Pacific, the Aleutian Islands. And it got into my head that these people had stories. These are my relatives, and they had stories to tell. And these stories should get down on paper, and not just for those of us now, relatives and other people, to appreciate their stories now, but also to have these stories down for future generations, that they should live in posterity, so that people will know what individuals went through in the war and what their experiences were. And in talking to my uncles, I found that there were some who had experiences that were burned into their memories, that were awful experiences. Nicky's dad, my Uncle Louis, he was a ground crewman with our Air Force in England, and one of his jobs was to drive fire trucks. And so one day, a crippled fighter plane comes in from the continent, a P-38 that had been shot up over Nazi-occupied Europe. And the pilot might have been injured, and he had to make a crash landing at the base. Uncle Louis rushes there in his fire truck. The plane hits the ground and flips over and catches fire. But by the time Louis and the other responders got there, the plane was a fireball, and there was little that they could do. And at this point, Uncle Louis is looking through the flames, and he sees the pilot upside down in the cockpit, banging on the bubble canopy with his fist. And they could not save him. And as Louis is telling this story, he turned to me and he said, "That really got me. It got me for a long time."
Wow. Tell us just a little more about your cousin, if you're able to. You know,
Sure.
Yeah, I think you're leaving us hanging right now,
I
Dave.
did that on purpose.
Okay. All right, very good.
So I needed to know what happened to Nicky. It was just something that grabbed hold of me. And it seemed so awful, to think for many years wrongly that he was, he was killed by the enemy when he was not. And so what really happened? And I was hobbled in doing this because there was no written record of an investigation of it. So what I had to do was I had to talk to people who were there. And what I learned from sparse mentions in Nicky's personnel file and elsewhere was that he had just arrived in Vietnam at a place called Chu Lai. It was a U.S. base on the South China Sea coast, halfway up Vietnam. And your first week at the base is a orientation program. And as part of that orientation, the guys were trucked off the base to a landing zone. It was just off the base, and into a plywood classroom. And there was an instructor who talked to them about why it's important to pay attention to grenades, because they can kill you.
Yeah.
And so, as part of his shtick, he's standing in front of maybe 40 guys. As part of his shtick, he takes a grenade and he's talking to them about it, and he pulls the pin and he talks some more. And then he pretends to fumble it. And it clatters around on the floor. Well, these guys sitting in front had seen in their training so far a lot of routines with dummy explosives.
Yeah.
And so they didn't move. And the instructor said something like, "You have 5 seconds. What are you going to do?" And the grenade prattled around and it went under the table up front where Nicky was seated with 3 other pilots. And it went off.
Wow.
There. Went off under this picnic-like table. Nicky lost a leg. He hung on for 5 days at an evacuation hospital on the base. And that's where he died.
Wow.
2 other soldiers also died from the explosion, and a dozen were seriously injured.
So how did you put the story together? Like, was there anyone still alive that was there, or, you know?
Yes, I found several guys who were in the classroom when the grenade went off.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were able to give me an account almost moment by moment of what transpired, which is why I was able to tell you what I just found. But it took me years to find these people because, as I said, there's no written record of it.
Wow.
And by putting queries into veterans' newsletters, I was able to find these folks.
Wow.
And ultimately, somebody got in touch with one of the publications and said, "You know, that guy who was writing about the grenade going off in the classroom?
Yeah.
Well, I know who the instructor was."
Wow.
And it was the only way I could get the name. So the editor of this publication got in touch with me. He said, "Here's the guy, here's where he lives." And I was able to call this guy, and one of the first things he said was, "I'm not going to tell you who it was." Because he wanted to protect him.
Yeah.
But in the course of our conversation, he let the name slip.
Okay. Yeah.
And the instructor was a truck driver on the West Coast. And in 2001, in the fall, my wife and I went out there unannounced, and we showed up at his door. And I'd had plenty of preparation for this. An expert on how to do difficult interviews told me things like, "You have to have a speech ready for when he answers the door.
Okay.
30 seconds to tell him everything he needs to know." And I did this speech. It was, part of it was, "Nobody blames you for this. My cousin was there. I'm a writer.
Yeah.
He died from the explosion. I'd really like to talk to you about it."
Yeah.
And there was a long pause at the screen door. Then he pushed it open and said, "Yeah, come on in."
Wow.
And very clearly,
Yeah.
he is still traumatized
Yeah.
by this.
Yeah.
Because he was stunned. He was stunned when we showed up. But he did talk for hours. And not just that day, but later in the week, he talked again. And we just let him talk about it. And he said it lives with him all the time.
Yeah.
And he had to get over this. He had to go on with life. Imagine the fact that he had killed his own men and maimed his own men in a classroom where the point was to teach them how to survive their first year. But all those guys in that classroom, they had just arrived in Vietnam.
Yeah. It's interesting here at Building Bridges, where we provide equine assisted therapy. People from even Vietnam that are carrying those things are coming here and working with the mental health therapists and the equine specialists to work out those things they've been carrying for 50 years or so. So just, we don't have time to tell all your stories. It would be good to hear them, but We talked about your family members, and that gave you the inspiration, I guess, to put this. This is all about your cousin.
Yes.
Tragedy at Chulai. And then the war stories. This is a collection of different people that you tell those stories about. And these books are available, right? You can get those online if you I don't know how the best way to just Google war stories in their own words.
And my name.
And your name, David Venditta. Now, something else too is you have been involved in discovering stories about prisoner of war people, I believe.
Yes.
Can you just talk about that for a couple of minutes?
Well, yes, I did a number of interviews with POWs, and of course, it's one of those things where the people who had the most trauma of the veterans I spoke with were the ones who endured time in POW camps. And the most prominent of them, I would say, was a guy named Joe, who was a survivor of the Bataan Death March and 3.5 years of captivity by the Japanese in Manchuria. And Joe, he told me that he lived in fear all the time, that he never knew from one day to the next whether some Japanese soldier was going to kill him. And getting him to talk about these things, it was sometimes difficult. One time when I showed up at his door, he opened it and stood back and yelled at me. You're making me remember all this stuff. The nightmares are back.
Wow. Yeah.
And that didn't stop him from talking.
Okay. Yeah.
But there was another time that I will never forget, and we were talking in his living room. He was talking about something about the suffering and the brutality in the camps, and suddenly he just stopped talking, and he was staring straight ahead, looking directly at me. But I don't think he was seeing me. It seemed that he was seeing something else, something, a distant horror, something evil. It sent a chill through me. I've never seen such a look in anyone's eyes since then. Not to this day.
Wow.
It was a horror.
Yeah. Dave, you're going to allow us. You're gonna connect your blog to our website, Building Bridges website. I'm sure that if you're watching this, you who are watching this are going to want to know more stories. And so, if you want to keep up with this, you can go to www.buildingbridgesfoundation.org and go into our website, and you're going to find Dave's blog available to you there.
The mission of Building Bridges: to provide safe space for personal growth through equine assisted activities for veterans and their families, as well as those suffering from trauma and loss, and those who are struggling with cognitive and emotional challenges. Continues to advance through months of COVID pandemic afflictions and safety protocols restricted strong client advance. In the past 15 months, we've initiated and are championing readiness preparations for opening the farm again, rebounding to offer strong caring program opportunities in the present and for the future.
Given all you had, and then you'd given more. Could you have really known what the years would have in store? That no one comes home unbroken, yet the past so seldom spoken. So many victories won, while inner battles lost. So many wounds within, there's no way to count the cost. chose to serve your nation. And now you need a strong foundation. We're building bridges where the noble they can stand. We're building bridges, and we'll take you by the hand. And though the scars are deep and the past may never sleep, you know that we will keep on building bridges. In boxes draped in flags, so many have come home. For those who have prevailed, well, you will not walk alone. Still courageous and so brave, we'll walk with you along the way. We're building bridges where the noble they can stand. We're building bridges, and we'll take you by the hand. And though the scars are deep and the past may never sleep, you know that we will keep on building bridges. And for ashes give you beauty, for despair a cloak of praise, and for mourning give you gladness, and take the ghosts of yesterdays. Now you live for tomorrow, and you can make it through the day, 'cause you know there is a way with building bridges. And for ashes give you beauty, for despair a cloak of praise, and for mourning give you gladness, and take the ghost of yesterdays. Now you live for tomorrow, and you can make it through today, 'cause you know there is a way with building bridges. Because you know there is a way, we're building bridges.
We know the future of Building Bridges Foundation calls for uncompromised commitment as we continue to be a righteous and relevant advocate for veterans in Lancaster County and beyond. At 2021, as we continue to welcome those that have invested life sacrificially, standing on guard for us. If you are a veteran, Building Bridges Foundation is purposed for you and your family. If you're not a veteran, it's about you too, giving back, partnering with us, investing some time and resources in the work of sustaining the property, services, and recovery programs. The more we discover about our military services, the more understanding we are that return from deployment, the combat experiences, the incredible on-guard capacities that veterans serve in, the broken relationships, the accumulation and pushback of horrors and fears and unspeakable traumas is one of the greatest social concerns of this era. And with more than 2.5 million in uniform today serving around the world, it's going to be that way for a while. That's the why of Building Bridges. As we press on, as we wake up to and take on new knowledge and awareness of our military veterans and their families, we discover they are the real takeaways that keep Building Bridges programs and services relevant. They, the veterans, are the beneficiaries. They are the primary stakeholders.